Hello there, this is L24 World News, streaming live from the capital Algiers, and these are your headlines. The UN's Western Sahara envoy Stephen de Mistura met Saturday with the representatives of the Polisario independence movement in Algeria as part of a regional tour. Amid sustained shelling in the area, the Russian controlled Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in Ukraine was disconnected, but still able to run electricity through a reserve line. Former US President Donald Trump has branded his successor Joe Biden an enemy of the state as he slammed last month's FBI raid of his Florida home. Chileans are voting in a referendum Sunday on whether to adopt a far-reaching new constitution that would fundamentally change the South American country. Good afternoon, I'm your host Abdulrahim Kashur, and those were today's top stories. First, in our topic on news, the UN Secretary General Personal Envoy to Western Sahara, Stephen de Mistura, had a conversation on Saturday with the Chief of Staff of the Sahrawi Army, Mohammed Al-Wali Akik. The talks came in light of the reality of the direct confrontation with the Moroccan occupation after it decayed the ceasefire agreement on November the 30th, 2020, after the attempt to attack Sahrawi civilians through the illegal crossing of Karakart. The representative of the Polisario Front of the United Nations said that preliminary meeting has brought together the personal envoy of the United Nations Secretary General for Western Sahara, Stephen de Mistura, with the Sahrawi delegation was to confirm the Polisario Front's dealings with the UN track and stress the need to respect the will of the Sahrawi people for self-determination and independence.
كان اللقاء فرصة لتأكيد موقف السلطات الصحراوية وجبهة البوليساريو.
This meeting was an opportunity to confirm the Sahrawi and Polisario Front stance over the willingness to reach a common ground with the United Nations framework
ولكن دائما مع التذكير والتأكيد
and with the legal framework that outlined the Western Sahara cause as self-determination, as well as the necessity to fully respect the Sahrawi absolute right of self-determination and independence that cannot be negotiated.
السبب الذي منعه من زيارة الأراضي المحتلة من الجمهورية الصحراوية.
The reason that prevented him from visiting the occupied Sahara is very clear. It is the refusal of the Moroccan occupation authorities to visit the occupied territory and meet with the Sahrawi citizens there, and to be a direct eyewitness to the oppression and intimidation of the Sahrawi citizens at the hands of the Moroccan security forces.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres announced the appointment of Abdul Hay Bathily of Senegal as his special representative and head of the United Nations support mission in Libya, the country that has witnessed fierce clashes between opposing armed groups amid calls from UN Security Council to the end of violence.
The UN Security Council has called on all parties in Libya to preserve the prevailing calm on the ground and to refrain from violence or other actions that could escalate tensions. The Council members urged the parties to reach an agreement on a plan to uphold presidential and parliamentary elections that could unify the government after years of disputes. The Council had also denounced the bloody clashes carried out by the armed groups in Tripoli lately, reiterating the fact that there can be no military solution to the conflict there. On the same context, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has appointed Senegalese diplomat Abdoulaye Bathily as his special envoy in Libya. Despite the Government of National Unity hesitations in Tripoli, diplomatic sources said the UN Security Council members had agreed on Bathily's appointment as UN Special Envoy in Libya. The Senegalese former government minister succeeds John Koubis, who resigned from the position earlier this year after diplomatic efforts to end Libya's conflict.
Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Mtala Mamra met on Saturday with members of Algerian community residing in Mali. The meeting was an opportunity to raise concerns aimed at unifying efforts in order to enrich the relations of good neighborliness, cooperation and solidarity that exist between the two brotherly peoples. Al-Shabaab fighters have killed at least 19 civilians and destroyed trucks laden with food aid in the overnight attack in Somalia's central region. The armed group launched the attack in Hayran area in the semi-autonomous state of Harish Bel in the central Somalia. The truck were transporting food supplies from Baldawain city of Mahas town. Russian install authorities accused Ukrainian troops on Tuesday of once again shelling the territory of Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. Written on Telegram, Russian-appointed Zaporizhia regional officials stated that the reason for the shelling and the deliberate intention of Kiev leadership to disrupt the IAEA mission, the plant again lost connection to the last remaining main external power line, but continues to supply electricity to the grid through a reserve line. British Foreign Minister Liz Truss said on Sunday she would announce within a week action to tackle raising energy bills and increase energy supplies if she is, as expected, appointed Prime Minister.
That if I'm elected as Prime Minister, within 1 week, I will make sure there is an announcement on how we are going to deal with the issue of energy bills and of long-term supply to put this country on the right footing for winter. I will act immediately on bills and on energy supply because I think those two things go hand in hand. We need to deal with the immediate problem. We need to help people. We need to help businesses. But we also need to sort out the supply issues that have made us end up being where we are now.
Same line of thought, Olaf Scholz said that Germany will be able to cope with this winter. He also stated that it wants to use the exceptional profit of companies to lower energy prices.
We will last out until then, because we've made some decisions in the last few months to store gas, put coal-fired plants back in service. And that's why we can now say that we can deal with this winter.
Wir werden durch diesen Winter kommen. Das ist die Frage.
Russian energy major Gazprom extended the shutdown of gas flows through its key Nord Stream 1 pipeline to Germany on Friday evening, providing no time frame for reopening. The European Union's Economy Commissioner has said that Russia turning off gas supplies to Europe would be in a breach of contract and would have consequences.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has taken another step toward the cut of gas supplies. It would be a violation of contracts. Everyone hopes that it will not happen. If it happens, it's clear that there will be consequences, but it's also clear that we have been preparing for months for this risk. So we must not underestimate it, but certainly we are not going to be intimidated.
In a dramatic escalation of the energy battle between Russia and the West, G7 countries intended a new blow to Moscow's energy windfall and decided on Friday to urgently cap the price of Russian oil.
Russia benefits economically from the uncertainties associated with the war in the energy markets. Russia is currently making high profits from the export of raw materials, such as oil, and we want to resolutely oppose this.
The attempt to stem the flow of funds into the Kremlin's coffers seems to be a mechanism complex to be put on place. Within few hours, Moscow hit back, announced an indefinite shutdown of its vital Nord Stream gas pipeline to Germany, citing malfunctions on a key turbine along the pipeline. But for the German manufacturer Siemens Energy, an oil leak alone cannot justify, from a technical point of view, the halt of the gas pipeline. European officials said Russia was cutting back its gas deliveries to punish Europe for its opposition to the war in Ukraine. Moscow denies using energy supplies as an economic weapon in retaliation for Western sanctions. The tit-for-tat move comes amid growing fears that households in the EU will not be able to afford the cost of heating the coming winter, with governments under pressure to alleviate the pain of the resulting high inflation. Despite the United States saying priority in its energy exports will be for Europe, the old continent remains highly dependent on Russian energy, and an escalation in hostilities could exacerbate the economic crisis already facing the Western allies.
To a different matter now, former President Donald Trump returned to the campaign trail in Pennsylvania's first event after the FBI's raid of his Mar-a-Lago resort. During his rally, the former president spoke out against the raid and Joe Biden's administration. He referred to the FBI investigation as a travesty of justice and one of the most horrific abuses of power by any government in American history.
America's laws, traditions, and principles, you're all enemies of the state. He's an enemy of the state. You want to know the truth? The enemy of the state is him and the group that control him, which is circling around him. Do this, do that, Joe. You're going to do this, Joe, right? The shameful raid and break-in of my home, Mar-a-Lago, was a travesty of justice that made a mockery of America's laws, traditions, and principles before the entire world. The entire world was watching, and they're shocked. They're shocked. They're trying to silence me, and more importantly, they are trying to silence you. But we will not be silenced, right?
As the peak campaign season approaches for midterm election, Pennsylvania, the state that experienced major successes and terrible defeats for political parties, has emerged as the nation's political battleground. The outcome of Pennsylvania's governorship, one of the biggest U.S. midterm election races between a right-wing political outsider and a seasoned member of Democratic establishment, may have implications for both the future of abortion rights and the integrity of free and fair elections. Argentina's Congress on Saturday condemned the attempt of the assassination of Argentina's Vice President Cristina Fernandez. During a special session, the lawmakers denounced the criminal act and demanded a prompt investigation and conviction of those responsible for the failed gun attack.
On behalf of the pro-front bloc, together with the rest of the political forces, we have agreed on a standard text rejecting the severe events with the attack and attempted assassination of the nation's vice president. That is why we will leave the premises after voting on the resolution and having fulfilled the reason for the call.
We firmly believe that the attempt on her life has marked a limit. Not only that, but it has also crossed any limit we can consider while living in a democracy.
Chile is preparing for a constitutional referendum, one of the most significant votes in recent years that could lead to a significant shift in the country's economic and political landscape.
Chile made the final touch on the preparations for the historic decision on Saturday, which is to keep the constitutions that was created by military Augusto Pinochet, or approve progressive new text that promises to shake up the policy and social fabric of Andean country. This vote is crossroads for Chile, long seen as sport of conservatism, which reinforced decades of growth and stability that also created stark inequality between rich and poor, that led to months of angry protests in 2019.
I come here in favor of rejection because the constitution they want to approve in Chile does not give the Chilean people any guarantees. It is a constitution that divides Chileans, and that is why today I say rejection by Chile.
By contrast, the proposed new constitution focuses on social rights, the environment and gender equality.
Approval is not just something that is good or bad. It's the best that Chile has had for 200 years. 200 years of repression, 200 years of injustice, 200 years of faults and the many pains of many Chileans.
Chilean Minister of Transport and Telecommunications made a visit to the national stadium that turned into a station and called Chileans to vote on whether to accept the new constitution to replace the one created by Gustavo Pinochet.
I hope that if there is the possibility to come on foot, to come by bicycle, and if it is not, by public transport. The armed forces have been available, and the Ministry of Defense has also been available to receive people so that they can come by bike tomorrow. It is a difference compared to the previous votes.
Some of the most controversial articles in the proposed constitution have to do with Chile's indigenous population, which makes up almost 30% of the country's 19 million people.
An explosive attack in rural Willa, San Luis Municipality in western Colombia resulted in the death of 7 officers. It is the biggest assault on police and the Gustavo Petró's administration, who took office as the nation's first leftist president on August 7. The Colombian president arrived at the attack scene where he offered his condolences and stated the deployment tactics in the region need to be improved.
The ambush was a 90-degree curve where the vehicle had to stop. It was carrying personnel in the back, in an area despite not having had any bloody events since the signing of the peace agreement was the cradle of the FARC. Therefore, a risky area to be careful. That curve allowed the ambush to be effective. Therefore, from now on, we must plan better deployments in those areas.
Officials warned on Sunday that more flooding was expected as Lake Mancha, the largest in Pakistan, reached dangerous water levels from unprecedented monsoon rains that started in mid-June and have killed nearly 1,300 people. According to meteorologists, more rain in the region is expected in the coming days, and authorities urge people in Sindh province near the lake to evacuate. Amid the unprecedented economic crisis that hit Lebanon in recent years, money transfer companies are seeing the equivalent alternative for bank services, which impose restrictions on people and companies for their access to money.
Money transfer companies offer services previously provided by the banks in Lebanon, which have drastically reduced their financial activities since the beginning of the economic crisis in the country.
Everything is good to make my life easier. They make things easier than others. At the bank, even if you have an account, you need an appointment to enter. Here you enter, you take a number, you change. I don't have any money, but I get money from my siblings abroad. That's how we live.
Many Lebanese people and companies turned to money transfer companies rather than the banks due to the latter's restrictions that prevented savers from having free access to their money, while the local currency lost more than 90% of its value against the dollar on the black market.
Everything in the banks is frozen now. As a Lebanese or someone living here or anyone else in the world, if someone freezes your money, you can't do anything about it. You can't buy anything with it, nothing.
According to the World Bank, Lebanon is one of the countries where the volume of transfers as a percentage of GDP is very high, reaching 54% in 2021 and amounting to more than 6 billion euros per year.
If the banks don't go bankrupt and give the depositors money back to the people and everybody gets what's theirs, then we'll trust banks again. But now, you can't even withdraw a pound. How are you supposed to trust the banks enough to invest more money if they take it?
If you have transferred to the bank, you will die 100 times before you have it. How are we supposed to restore their confidence in the future? So anyway, it's faster.
Since 2019, Lebanon has plunged into a deep economic crisis, blamed by a large part of the population for the mismanagement. To cope with the collapse, banks have cut thousands of jobs, closed hundreds of branches, and suspended many services, including lending.
Although most international eyes are directed to Africa as an alternative for the gas supply that has been cut by Russia, parts of the mother of mankind and mainly the Horn of Africa are witnessing an unprecedented drought which directly affects food security in the region.
The worst drought in the Horn of Africa in more than 40 years looks almost certain to persist after the World Meteorological Organization stated that forecasts for October to December show high chances of drier than average conditions.
It pains me to be the bearer of bad news when millions of people in the region have already suffered the longest drought in 40 years. Sadly, our models show with a high degree of confidence that we are entering the 5th consecutive failed rainy season in the Horn of Africa.
The latest outlook confirms the fears of 8 agencies, which have been warning for months about the worsening consequences of the drought for Ethiopia, Somalia, and parts of Kenya. The drought has coincided with a global rise in food and fuel prices, pushed up by the war in Ukraine, that's hit parts of Africa hardest. The World Bank confirmed in June that an estimated 66.4 million people in the Horn of Africa region were forecast to experience food stress or a food crisis emergency. The United Nations World Food Programme warned that the world has been facing a deteriorating food insecurity in the past 3 years, with the population facing severe food shortage increased by 150% to about 345 million people.
WHO is very concerned about this situation. It does lead to many families taking desperate measures to survive.
The food scarcity was driven by the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, and the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, the world's 2 major grain producers and exporters, which led to a drop in food exports and a surge in global food crisis.
Many thousands of people leave their homes in search of food, water, and pasture. 700,000 people are already facing famine in parts of Ethiopia, Somalia, and South Sudan.
World Food Programme Chief Economist Arif Hussain described the situation of food shortage as getting from bad to worse, mentioning that around 828 million people go to bed hungry every night, and 50 million people in 45 countries are teetering on the edge of famine.
A lengthy line of people started to form in the heart of Moscow, past the city's well-known Bolshoi Theatre and into the Hall of Columns of the House of Unions, where mourners paid their respect to Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union. In the traditions of previous Soviet leaders, his body lay in the state in the ground Hall of Columns in central Moscow.
A great politician has left. The Gorbachev era ends today. It ends today, not in 1990. I couldn't stay away today. I came to pay tribute to Mikhail Gorbachev.
Serena Williams has most likely played her last match as a tennis professional, and from the moment the final point was won by her contender. The announcement of her possible retirement was met with many tributes by public figures. Mariam Zian.
She built one of the most prolific careers in all sports.
Thank you.
Her fans too could be seen tearing up as the match ended.
People know her that don't even follow sports. People know her that don't even follow tennis. I have friends that don't know anything about tennis, don't even know how to keep score, and they will watch a Serena Williams match. So she's just the greatest of all time.
After a joyous run into the third round, there was no shame in a loss, allowing the 23 Grand Slam winner to exit with dignity intact and head held high. The relentless never-surrender attitude made Serena Williams tennis dominant player for over 2 decades on display, right until the very final point. Unsurprisingly, there have been many tributes to one of the most famous athletes in history, including emotional messages from fellow public figures.
And from our part, we say congratulations to Serena Williams for this career. And for more updates, you can follow our pages on social media platform, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. For now, bye-bye.